Hey everybody, Whitney here, and I'm doing a solo episode as a spinoff from the episode I released last week with Amber Bariaktari, who is an integrative nutrition, health, and wellness coach. And on our episode, we covered a lot of things. We covered her journey with autoimmune disorder and her focus in her work now to help others who are working through an autoimmune disorder. We also talked about her experience with polyamory, polyamorous relationships. And we talked about a book that she's writing with one of her life partners, which is called Always Come From Love in Everything You Do and Say, Even to Yourself. And that title definitely got my wheels turning in terms of just how important that is to come from love. And I wanted to do this episode to offer some takeaways and some actual tips on how can we come from love on a daily basis in our daily lives in various situations. And what does that mean? So I want to start with that, which is, what does it mean to come from love? Something I mentioned in the episode with Amber is the idea that love is the only action and everything else is a reaction. So when we're coming from a place of love, we are actively offering something. We're actively giving something, putting something out. And that's a place that's coming from our heart, from a place of a sense of security and safety and love, right? Coming from love. Anything else is usually coming from a place of a lack of safety and security. So a place of insecurity, we might call it more of an ego space rather than a heart space. So you can think of coming from love as an action from our heart space. Coming with reactivity is from our ego space, and that often involves forms of anger, resentment, guilt, remorse, grief, many other things that are reactive, right? Somebody says something, we go into a situation and we feel like we're unable to feel open and safely give love. We feel like we need to close up and be defensive, be reactive based on insecurity. Because within love, in our love space, in our heart space, there is no fear, there is no insecurity, there is no knowledge that we should be anything other than emanating love. It can be difficult to always be in that zone. Most people vacillate between both, right? Sometimes, I'm sure we've all been there, where we just feel particularly open and connected with others, right? We can say, people often say, like, my heart melted, or my heart was just beaming, right? So when you think of times where you felt that way, maybe it was you were watching somebody you love get something they always wanted, or like have a celebration for them, or look really happy, and you just get that warm feeling, that open feeling where you're giving love, where love is being emanated from you. But you can probably also think of times where maybe you're in a meeting at work or a gathering with friends, and somebody makes a comment that just makes you feel like you close off. Maybe you feel threatened, attacked, offended, or it brings up some of your own insecurities, past trauma, such stuff like that. So I think an important thing to remember is that all of us have the ability to come from love. And in Amber's book, she's saying, always come from love. So again, that's kind of a tall order, but we want to be working towards that. We would rather be coming from a place of love than from a place of fear or reactivity. It's a very powerful thing to come from love, because again, it's an active process. It's purely your energy being given, your highest energy, right? Giving others your highest energy. And we also know, that it feels a lot better. Being angry doesn't feel very good. Sometimes it can feel vindicated. We can maybe feel strong in our anger, or like we want to make something happen or push something. But when you stop and think about it, anger is fairly uncomfortable. It kind of, reverberates throughout your body in a way that isn't very pleasant. Whereas love is a lovely feeling. It's that feeling of being at ease, of feeling peace, of feeling that euphoric sense that everything is just as it should be and everything is wonderful. It's joy. Some might say that when you feel love and joy, that's when you're feeling your soul. That's what your soul feels all the time. So coming from love, another way to say that is coming from your soul. With that said, what are some ways that we can practice coming from love? What are some things we can do? So I offer just a few little things to more so rather than steps, they're just sort of check marks to kind of run throughout your day. Like, if I want to come from love, let me first check in with these things. So the first thing to do is pause, right? Let's say somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, I really need you to do this. You might have initial a reaction, right? That's like, oh, another thing. And why are they asking me to do this? But pause and notice that, right? Notice like, am I being reactive or can I find some space to be active in this? So let's say it feels like an unfair or not well-received request. It doesn't mean that we have to say, yes, I'll do it. And that means coming from love. Coming from love means saying whatever is completely true and feels best to you. In some moments, it may feel like the thing that we want to do is say, get lost. So we pause and we think about it. And if we're struggling with it, we can move into a state of awareness. Okay, I recognize this person is just trying to get this thing taken care of. And I might seem like the best person for the job, but I'm not feeling great about that. Could I do it? Yes. Do I have the capacity for it? Check in with yourself. Yes, I could do this. And it is actually pretty reasonable. It wouldn't take much time. And it's a part of my job, or, it's not a big deal. Just kind of get awareness, because how you feel is just as important as how everybody else feels, right? So you want to be aware of how this moment is making you feel. Then once you have awareness, you can get curious about it. So you can ask questions, right? You can say, oh, does this need to be done today? Is there, like, rather than being like, well, why do I have to do this? Like, what? I mean, yes, those are questions, but rather than being defensive, ask curious questions, right? Oh, how long do you think that would take? Could it be done tomorrow? Is there anyone else who could do it? Could I do it with somebody? So, because when we ask questions and we're curious, it's a kinder way. It is a form of coming from love, because we're not reacting, right? We're being active. We're engaging with a person. We're asking questions to get more information. And from there, we can have consideration, which is also a way of coming from love. With rather than, again, being reactive or defensive, we can say considerately, I understand this needs to be done. However, I'm not able to do this. How else can I help you? Can I maybe help you find somebody else to do it? Can I help you tomorrow? So if you think of that versus maybe, somebody comes up to you and you immediately kind of scowl, and then you're like, well, I don't know. I don't think I have time for that. I don't think I should have to do that. And then maybe saying, you should ask somebody else, or there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying we're human. Sometimes that's how we're going to react, especially if we've in the middle of 50 different things and somebody comes around. But if we're able to take that moment to pause and to think about, how can I come from love in this moment? Well, I can pause. I can gain awareness around the situation. How am I feeling? How am I responding to this? How do I want to actively respond to this? I can get curious about it by asking thoughtful questions and being considerate in my response. Think about where they're coming from, right? The same way you would hope people would do that for you. I hope that's a little bit helpful. And the last thing I'll say is, coming from love can really impact all of our relationships, right? This example was sort of like a work-based relationship, but you can see how it might happen in a family dynamic with a parent or a child or a sibling, or in a romantic relationship, right? Because those are often the most, places where elicits the strongest emotional responses, because we have a lot of expectations for our romantic partners. So they might say or request something and we might immediately want to react. But if we pause and gain awareness around how we're feeling, and then respond with curiosity and consideration, we might find that we feel a lot better with how that interaction went. And I think that's a key point, is that we often will feel a lot better in retrospect, after the fact, when we come from love. Now, this is just one little snippet, because of course, coming from love happens in all times and spaces, right? Coming from love can be when we go for a nature walk and we allow ourselves to see and notice the intricacies of life around us. We take time to slow down and notice it, come from that place of appreciation for things around us, consideration. Okay. So just some thoughts around that. I hope those takeaways were helpful. If you have any further questions or want to know any other information, I could do another video around coming from love and how it's applicable in so many different ways. And also just kind of see it, in the coming day, couple of days, week, see if you notice that feeling when you're coming from love, because it tends to feel good, but you can sense it. It's that, sort of, again, it's a sense of more peace rather than the sort of frenetic energy of anger or frustration or reactivity. You feel in your high self, right? You're coming from your high self. In DBT, they call it your wise mind. We're kind of being the sage, and you're saying, let me think about that. Let me consider, how am I going to show up? How do I show up in the situation? If I come from love, it looks like this. We can be mindful of it and decide how we respond. Something that hit me really hard one time is that I read, we all, we have a response ability, right? So breaking down the word responsibility, in that we have the ability to control our responses. And that hit me because oftentimes we feel like, well, I couldn't help it. It's how I felt. I responded how I felt. And that's, I hear that, I feel that a lot. But we do have the ability, to control how we respond. It doesn't literally leap out of us. We can always take that chance to pause and say, how can I come from love? Even if the situation frustrates me, even if I'm angry, even if I'm on my last nerve, can I take a second to pause? So again, I hope that's helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day.